guy away from his family, which is a big deal. But Robert Hancock, and I'm going to introduce Robert as well as John Scully. Robert is the Vice President of Sales for MobileSmith. And back, I want to say about 3 years ago, when we were looking at, actually when we first started Digital Now introducing mobile about 6 or 7 years ago, we built our own applications, our own mobile applications. And it was clear to us over time that mobile itself was going to become much like, remember the early days of probably none of you would remember HTML1, but the early days of content management. Remember before content management system, what would you do when you needed to get content published? Who was the most popular person in your organization?
Web guy.
The web guy, right? So back then, everything was bottled up into the web guy. But all along being content management, we introduced a Digital Now in 1999. So when content management came in, what happened? Content management allowed different people to sit there and create content and put workflow in so that everything wasn't bottlenecked. So that's exactly what we saw happening with mobile back about 7 or 8 years ago. And we were just waiting for that platform to come forward that would enable users instead of programmers to sit there and build applications. And through an extensive search, we found MobileSmith, and as one of the only, there's a number of different platforms that are out there today focused around what the enterprise does as a commercial organization. Very few have built a platform that enables users, much like content management was to HTML. This is what MobileSmith is to mobile application base. So that's the reason we reached out to MobileSmith, and it's the reason we have Robert here, and John Scully, who is on our team at Fusion, is director of our consulting and technology area. His background is with LMK and with Xerox and Kodak, so he's been really our product person on mobile as well. Robert is he's the vice president of sales, and he's, I guess I could say before, he's a former Clemson graduate, so I guess that's kind of okay, you know. He's also has a tattoo, but he was also co-CEO of Prometheus Group, and he has been in the learning space outsmart for a number of years before that. So he's kind of has learning in his DNA as well. So I've asked both of these guys to really talk about mobile itself in terms of how do you make it come to life? How do you create value around mobile? And that's what we're going to spend the next hour and a half. And we actually do a fun exercise here later on.
Yeah, so this is going to be a little different than what you might have expected. We're going to talk about here's my goal. My goal is to tell you guys a bit about mobile, answer some questions that you have, talk about some of the considerations that you might want to go through as you're thinking about maybe making a mobile app or even making the decision, should I make a mobile app? At the end of that, we are going to agree on an app. We're going to decide on okay, we want to build this app. And we're going to break up into groups, and we're going to start to think through what do we want that app to do. And then we're going to take each one of those requests and we're going to break down each one of them to talk about all the things that you need to consider and be aware of if you're going to try and deliver that use case in the market. And so it's basically an ideation session. This is what we do with a lot of our customers when we're engaged with them on the consulting thing to help them come up with an app idea. John's going to help me kind of go through some of the use cases that they've put together in the past. Just to give you the 30-second sales pitch. Our company was built so that people who don't know technology can still build mobile apps. And so I was telling them earlier about EEOC just built an event app with our platform, and actually the secretary and CIO never built anything past a PowerPoint, actually built their mobile app. And that's what EEOC is, Equal Opportunity Commission. The reality is that because mobile is relatively new, there's this group of people who are making a lot of money charging them to build mobile apps. And we think there's a transition period that's happening now where you should be able to use mobile apps for anything. I mentioned earlier use case. We have one in our office where the coffee drinkers have an app. And when they make a new fresh pot of coffee, they go and say, I made a new fresh pot. It gets a message out to everybody. Somebody can taste it and say, that really tastes terrible. There's no social networking around it. It used to be inside of our office app because we have another app that's just for the office. But because so many of us don't drink coffee, we got tired of getting messages. We said, you guys need to go get your own app. So I don't like PowerPoints, but I don't have another option, so this is what we're gonna do. Well, I hope we are. So what I'm gonna try and cover again in like the first half-ish session of this is what are 4 key principles of an efficient mobile app strategy that can help you drive return on investment? So return on engagement, which I think you guys are more familiar with from the term. Create a great user experience with mobile apps and what are the best practices around that, and what are some of the steps you should go through if you're going to launch member engagement apps or other apps for other reasons. By the way, please interrupt. Question pops up in your head, just answer. Say, Robert, okay? So there's a fairly typical approach to mobile strategy. How many of you guys have released a mobile app? Okay. How many of those released from a canned version of an app, meaning you bought an app and made it yours? Or how many of you released an app that was built from scratch? So 2 or 3 of you built that from scratch. So you're probably a little familiar with this process already.
I didn't build it, I hired them.
Right. Those are lucky guys right now. You know why? Because they make $120,000 to $150,000 a year. That's how much it costs to hire an Android developer in this market. So it's a buyer's market or seller's market. So you go through this process where you're deciding what you want and what do I have to compromise on. Do I want to do mobile website or mobile app? My advice is always, you really should consider doing both. But there's definitely use cases for just doing one or the other. Do I want to do web, hybrid, or native app? And we're going to go through some discovery about what those 3 things are and how you should think through that. If I'm going to do a native app, do I do iOS? Do I Android? Do I do both? Did you do both or one?
On one product we just did iOS, on another product we did both.
Yeah.
It was a magnitude order of 1.
Yeah. So that's a sacrifice that unfortunately a lot of times you have to make. Do I build it in-house or do I outsource? I would say for this group, it's probably going to be mostly over here because you don't have a tool like ours and can't do it in here, but that's okay. And so you really want to follow a kind of lean principles process when you're thinking about mobile, mainly because you can really make big mistakes. And right now, from a cost perspective, making mistakes are very costly. You need to prioritize features. We're going to talk about that. What is an MVP, a minimal viable product? Matching what you said your goal was going to be for the app, what it's actually doing, what's most important to meet that goal. Are you going to centralize it through one department? Have you centralized it through one department? Should you centralize it through one department? We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. You should really take an iterative approach to development. And what we mean by that is, if I wanted to make Facebook, if you're going to recreate it right now, that list of what it would have to do is going to be really long, right? And it's going to be nearly unaffordable. You have to go out, forget about the fact that you have to create a community to make it worthwhile. We're just talking about making an app running in the App Store. The platform costs are going to be significant. So sometimes you need to bite off a little bit of an apple and bite off a little more as time goes along. What are major changes and additional ideas that you have? Should they wait? What about version 2? Those kind of things too. Now, when you release that app, did you think about version 2, or did you just say, let's get version 1 out and we'll see what happens?
Yeah, let's just get version 1 on it.
Yeah. So I've been in the software industry for about 20 years, and I find that that's very much the case when you're having to have somebody else build something for you. You're kind of forced into that paradigm. Mobile is different than everything else you've seen. You really do need to think of the fact that I'm using that app for about 3 months and I'm going to get X value from it. What do I do in month 4, right, to get this person to use the app again? What new function am I going to deliver there? How am I going to learn from the experiences of the first 3 versions, so that in the first 3 months, so that the next piece of software that I deliver is going to be good and effective for its use case? So, it just went from 62 degrees in to 100.
We did that for you.
I got a sweater on too. All right. We really teach 4 principles of agile mobile application strategy. Number 1 is, and I'll go through this list, decentralized. Anybody can have an app idea. Number 2, we really want people to think of apps in a 3 to 5 day time delivery framework. Now, we use our technology to help them do that, but at the end of the day, that's what we teach our customers. You really should have zero compromise. What that means is, if you want to use iBeacons to send a notification to everybody who walks into your front door that welcome to our building, please go to the security desk, don't compromise, right? Do that. That function is available to you for any experience. You don't have to sacrifice it. It's something you can get done.
Does everyone know what iBeacons is?
Has anybody ever been with your phone into the Apple Store? Okay. Did anything pop up while you were there? Now you may have iBeacon messaging turned on, but Apple was really the kind of first people to bring this to market. They're these low-power Bluetooth devices that are basically the size of packed cigarettes. And you can get different ones, some that are the size of a key fob or whatnot, but the most effective ones are about that big. And what you can do is you can do proximity messaging, and you can also do geo messaging. So that means we had a board meeting in our office about 2 months ago, and we built an app for our board members to have. When they walked in the front door, downstairs, they walked within 50 feet of this beacon that was in the ceiling, and they said, "Welcome to our building. Please come to the elevators and on up to floor 2. We placed another beacon in the hallway on floor 2, and when they opened the door, they got another message that was set with 10 feet of proximity that said, "Please come to the Mobile Smith door and press the button." When they walked through the door, we had one set with 5 feet of proximity. "Welcome, please come to the boardroom on the right." When they got in the boardroom and sat down at the table, we had another beacon with 5 feet of proximity that said, "Welcome, here's your agenda," and it popped up in beacon. So the other thing you can do, this is a use case that the Navy has, is they're going to have these base apps. So how many of you have ever been on a military base? How many of you have ever gotten turned away by security? So these military bases can be complex. So some of them have 5 or 6 different entries and exits, and you don't really know exactly which one's going at any one time. You also don't know when they're being shut down. So what they want to do is they actually want to have a general app for all of the Navy personnel as well as their families, and they want to be able to send a message that says, "Okay, I only want this to go to Pax River. Pax River security gates are all going to be shut down today from 3 to 5. So everybody who has that Navy app worldwide has got the capability to get that message, but only the people that are within X number of miles of that base are actually going to receive it. So those are some things you can do with beacons. We've integrated with the Gimbal platform, which is Qualcomm's product. And our customers are using that like in a hospital environment to do wayfinding. You get lost in the hospital, and you walk by a beacon, "Oh, here's where I am."
So other use cases for that is, Jack, you talked about other people's money, right? And we look at we know event apps are big. We're using event apps all the time. We can use the event app and other people's money to actually siphon into your app by selling space on your app, by a geolocation. So you go to certain individuals that are within that city where you're having your event and say, "You know what, I am going to sell you, for $1,000. Anyone that walks by is going to say, "Hey, just so you know, you just walked by Hank's Barbecue, and I know you're part of the XYZ conference. Get 10% off." And so they're going to get a bump up in the app when you walk by. So it's using other people's money to help actually fund your app.
You can even do it if you've got booths in the space. You can sell that same thing to them. So when somebody walks by their booth, it pops a message up. I mean, there's a lot of use case there. When Victoria's Secrets rolls out their next app, sorry, I couldn't pick a better retailer that one. Just they're going to have it inside their stores where you're going to walk by a stack of sweaters and it's going to tell you to stop by one of these sweaters for $5 off. You can disable that function, and it's going to be weird. I think there's going to be some things that come out of that privacy-wise. So let's talk about decentralization. Right, absolutely. I have to tell you that if you want to read about who's doing some really unique things, mobile and retail, it is Walgreens. They are going down a rabbit hole again. How many of you are Walgreens customers? How many of you have their app? So I had never been into a Walgreens store ever until about a year and 2 months ago. when I found out you could refill your prescription from the app without calling anybody, without going to the store. And so once I found that out, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. So my non-Walmart store is Walmart. Does anybody have a non-Walmart store? If I'm not going to Walmart, I'm going to this place, Publix or whatever that might be. They won me as a customer and my whole family based on their ability to help me not have to talk to anybody or make those bad phone calls. A lot of other use cases you can think about, if you've seen their growth over the last 2 years, they just bought Car Drugs, which is the North Carolina-based drug chain. They bought another one, I think, in Canada. That brand is growing, and that guy who runs mobile, he probably won't be there that much longer. Is really a big part of that.
What he's doing is he's trying to understand the touch points that his consumers have. So you have the phone in your pocket, and there's a touch point when you're going to go look for something. And in Robert's case, he wanted an easy way to get his prescription drugs. So that was the touch point that Robert needed in order to have that app on your phone. And one of the things that Robert will eventually talk about is making sure not only did you download that app, but that it stays on your phone.
Yeah, we'll talk about mobile books, and that was for me. That was the mobile book. It was being able to refill. For my Amazon app, their mobile book is. You guys may not know this exists, but I can scan something with my Amazon app at a store and decide if I can get it cheaper. So my boss and I were in Best Buy last week shopping for his daughter's birthday, and she wanted to buy this ruggedized case. He depends on me because he knows I'm a little bit nuts about shopping and getting the cheapest price. And so he's looking at the thing and he's like, there's no way you should pay $70 for that. He goes, what do you mean? I was like, well, there's got to be one in China for 10. Which is the same, right? But I guarantee you can get that one, and sure enough, I came to Amazon, it was like $36. And I had it at my house the next day with free shipping. Decentralization is something that is, it's a scary thing, right? Because opinions are like rear ends. Everybody has one, and they don't all smell good. But we do think, when you think about the delivery of a mobile app, the decentralization of it can, number one, help you be less dependent on a single individual, so that you're not worried that person's going to quit, or that's why these iPhone and Android developers make so much money, right? Because there's so much leverage there. Secondly, there's different roles and responsibilities there that people might have unique talent towards. For example, making the graphics for an app. How many of you have somebody who can use Photoshop? Right? So that person can do the graphics for the front end. How many of you have another technology guy that understands how to get the data feeds? Let him handle that piece. I mean, so you can hand off pieces and parts of that to different people and really make use of people's special capabilities. We talk about quick. We could probably have an app idea. We do this literally all the time. Sold Hospital for Special Surgery, which is the #1 ranked hospital in New York. Signed a contract with them on Friday, and their app is ready to go to the App Store today. It was tested yesterday by all their people and our people, and they spent, probably like you did, 9 months paying the developer who built the app that's already in there, and it doesn't look as good or do as much function. We'll talk about some of the reasons that you shouldn't compromise on function and how you might be able to be cost effective. So one of the things that we try to think through, I don't know, how many of you guys know who Cartman is? That one's Cartman, the executive.
Oh, over there.
Yeah.
I like this.
We think you probably have a community of people that could be very engaged on what they would want from you in a mobile presence. You know, I'm sure you guys are polling users. You're asking them those questions. You know, some of you are here, some of you are here, some of you may be from here. We really do think it's important to go through those people and see what kind of ideas they have. You know, you might find, and we're going to do a little of that today, that the idea you had doesn't quite turn out to be the idea you end up with. You know, we had a GI doctor. They owned 50 GI clinics come to us and say they wanted to do an app for their GIs, where our clinics are, and all these other things. And I they invited me to be a part of the ideation conversation. So I flew to New York, I'm in the room with them, and they're talking about all this stuff, and I said, you know, how many of you have had a colonoscopy in this room? And like, none of them have ever had one. And I'm like, well, I've had 6. I've died of colon cancer. I know all about this. And none of this stuff you're talking about do I want in a mobile app. I'm forced to come see you. It's not like I want to know where you are with the year 20. Number one, you want to make it easy for a doctor to refer somebody to you. And number two, you want to make sure that I at least remember my experience with you as being better than the last guy, right? So what I need from you is a prep app. I need an app that walks me through taking that stuff, going through that whole thing, and then showing up on time ready to go. And one of the things you find out is that 15% of people who go in for a colonoscopy don't get to have it because they didn't prep right. So at the end of it, we're like, no, we're going to do a colonoscopy prep app. Forget about all that. It's got an ROI associated with it, and we can cut that 15 down to 5. And so you do find that when you decentralize, sometimes you come up with a whole new idea that's better than the one you started with. And don't be one of those people that's so, and I know some of you are executive levels and stuff, and I can't tell you how many meetings I go into where the CEO told somebody, I've got to get a mobile app. And I wanted to do this. And they do it, and it gets in the app stores, and it's really bad reviews, and nobody downloads it. They delete it 3 minutes after they, try and be good about it. Because you, first of all, even though he told you to do it, you're the one that did it. Right? How many apps can you guys think of right now for your organization or really for anything other? No idea? You got 1, 2, or 3? How many of you have just one good idea? Nope. How many have 2 to 3? How many have more than that? Nobody raised your hand, so nobody has any ideas. So I just had a webcast with 180 people on Thursday. And it was always here. And we'll talk about that a little more later. Is that really one app? Is it 2 apps? Is it really 4? Are these really 4 apps you have ideas of? Like, that's the kind of thing you need to start thinking through, right? Should I be doing different apps for different groups of people for different reasons? What are the demographics here? I don't know what kind of association you might have, but sometimes within the association, your members really do represent 2 or 3 different distinct types of people. You might need to build something for each community.
Or you need to have a shell that has lots of applets under it, because that's what we have, a lot of apps out there, but you still have to have one container.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too. Either. If you can't get to what you want within 2 functions, you're 90% likely to deleting that app the first time you download it. So that's a whole nother thing to consider. If you do put too many buttons out there, people don't like it. So one of our, I'm giving you a little internal pitch. Our platform allows you to, what you see is what you get. You have this app canvas where you design an app. Then you go and build the function and upload the data, make your data connections, and then you email yourself the links or email it to your boss or the people that work for you. And they click on that link and it downloads it right on your device and you test it, just like you download it from the App Store. It also allows you to do some things like change function without going back to the App Store. So for example, if you're listing all your key executives and one of them gets fired Thursday at 2 o'clock, I need to be able to go get that guy out of the app right now. Now, the key here is if you've pointed to your CMS, as soon as you take him out of your CMS, he's going to come out of the app. If you don't have a CMS and you built it in the app, you could just go into the app and delete it. The next time they refresh that list, it changes. Well, then you replace him with a guy who's got a name that's that long. And now in the list view, it's like, oh, that looks terrible. You just go to the platform and drag that name out a little moment. Next time they update, it'll refresh. So you don't have to be dependent on the developer. I need to change that color. Well, it's $3,000. I used to be in that space. I know.
And I think the key that what Robert's talking about is not only can you type that information in yourself, but you can integrate it into your association management system, or if you want to integrate it into your content management system, to start creating dynamic, personalized content. And I think, Don talked about the 3 C's: content, context, and connections. And right now we're really talking about content and being able to grab that dynamic content that you're already putting into your AMS and into your CMS and being able to pull it right directly to that phone, because everyone's walking around with their phones.
All right, so we're gonna take some time and talk about this. How many of you have not heard of HTML5? Okay, good. So you have some choices when you're thinking about going mobile, right? So I can have a responsive design website that mobilizes pretty well. Probably a lot of you have already done that. That means that all of the existing content you have will look good on any device that goes on. I use the word any, asterisk BlackBerry. This is a bad town, that joke is.
Yeah. Wrong thing.
You can also do what's called a hybrid experience. Now, some of you, I showed the CrossFit app that I built. Actually, that's a hybrid experience. So it is a native app where pages inside of it, some of them are not native. Some of them I've just brought in the mobile website for Facebook, for example. Sometimes that's great. Like if you're having an event and you want to do polling, I would really highly recommend you use PollDaddy and just drop that web link for that. It looks great. Their web view of their polls look beautiful. And also allow you to make changes to that poll through PollDaddy and have it show up in the app differently, right? This is that we're talking about decentralization, right? I don't have to do something special for the app. I'm just doing it in the poll. We recommend people use that as an alternative to doing native polls inside the app, because PollDaddy already has everything built. You can use it all in one place. Then you can do native. Now, what you see here is that more native you go, the higher the cost is, right? We all know that a lot of CMSs build HTML5 just as a part of their process. You can get that for free, right? It's relatively cheap. But what if I do want to do something crazy? I mean, what if I want to take advantage of some unique function on one device or another? What if I want to use fingerprint authentication on the Apple side? Right? I can't do that with a mobile web experience. What if I want to do something cool like have a camera gallery experience inside the app? I'm at an event and I want to have people taking pictures and making comments and sending them up to the app, and then having them published in the app. Maybe you could do that with an HTML5 experience. The challenge you're going to have is, does everybody have a really good internet connection? Right? Because I can do that in a native app and it'll just sit there until you get good connection to upload it. And really the interface when you try and do something like that with the web is terrible because it takes like 4 clicks to get to it, when in fact I can just go click and hit upload. By the way, if you ever do anything like that, please make sure you don't have that stuff showing up automatically in the app. Let it park in the back office. You look at it to make sure nobody's taking pictures of their 3-year-old naked child in the bathtub, right? We actually, there's a use case where a company, who will remain unmentioned, didn't do that. And just accidentally, this person put pictures of their child in the app, and it got published to all of the users. And the company got sued, and the parents got a visit from Child Protective Services. So you do want to, there's a lot of other bad things they can do that you want to control, so you make sure that content doesn't get recommended.
Yeah, so where Robert's going is, this goes back to strategy, making sure that we have a strategy for our app, and that we can place workflow into our app to make sure that some things like this don't happen, and that there are individuals that have the ability to approve or decline something that's wrong.
Right. So if you look at this, group of attributes here, we talk about what's easy to do, what's simple to do, why you might do that, do I already have capabilities, etc. So for certain use cases, for example, if you want to, you're having a party next Friday, right, for your members for some reason. You really don't want a mobile app for that, right? It makes perfectly good sense to just go a flyer with that and stick it on your website or whatever it might be. But if you're going to have a meeting for your members and there's 300 of them showing up, you really do want to have a mobile app, right? And you want it to be very useful. You want to push your content through. You want to have the PowerPoints and all that showing up in the app because you want to be able to engage with them during the event and then after the event in the app too. So move forward again, we're going to talk about this a little bit because this is definitely the scenario. This gives me another little marketing pitch. Right, HTML5 is going to be your lower cost operation, right? But it's also going to be your lowest user experience. And that's basically because it's lowest common denominator. Because I need to work on an Android device of X, Y, and Z size size, and an iPhone device now of XY size, and an iPad potentially, and an Android tablet, and a BlackBerry, and a Windows device, I'm going to do it like this. But if you don't want to sacrifice, this is going to be, what if I don't have good bandwidth? What if I don't have any internet access? For example, the Navy, they do these apps for pilots. They've ripped their antennas out of their iPads. They can't have an antenna. So they have to dump that app on their device when they hook up to the computer, go get in their plane, and that's everything in the app. You can only do that with a native experience. You can drop a lot of content on the download. For example, if you guys are going to do some type of instructional, maybe you've got a big book or something you want to push, you can actually push that all on the first download, 14 gigs or whatever it might need to be. And you have to make that sacrifice. But you can't do it here, you have to do it out there. The middle ground here, a lot of people do, we find a lot of our customers, even using our platform, are still doing this middle ground. We've got a nice little registration page that they really enjoy, and it's, they're like, I don't really need to use your forms creation, I'm fine with this, and they'll just do that. How many of you have built one of these? You have? How many have built one of these? More people have done this. One of the things that we're seeing now in the market is an effort to utilize employees that you already have to do different things. And I mentioned earlier the EEOC, the woman's administrative assistant, actually built a mobile app with our platform, but you can see that in other cases. So you've got somebody who's building brochures, you've got somebody who's building flyers, they're maybe doing your constant contact emails, etc. That person is probably a little bit of teaching about wireframing, probably a good person to help be a part of your mobile app team, to help you design it for the screen. Every one of the best mobile app developers that we have on staff are graphics people. They're not developers. You really do want to be able to, clone and rescan your apps so that you can reuse them over time. So even if you're paying a custom app developer to build an app, if you can think of, okay, when I might write my requirement here, I'm going to say to the guy, listen, I need you to build this meeting app for me. But I need this built so that I can, next year, rip out the content and put in new content myself without you doing it, right? You need to think through that process. How can this property be reused? Now our customers, they built an app on a platform, they just hit a button that says copy from, and it grabs the copy of their app, it drops it in and asks you a question, do I want to keep this, do I want to not keep this? And then you get your new app and you just go and build it. And you mentioned earlier about the multiple use cases. We see people doing that quite frequently. We've got a customer, a university in New Jersey, who will release 3 apps in a 30-day period using 2 people. And they're doing that because we have some sample apps in our platform that we've already pre-built, and they're just copying those and relaying their branding on it and moving things around. It's not a template. It just has some pre-coded function.
So to what Rob was talking about, let's just say that you wanted to engage your chapters in some of in the app that you're creating, and to give a little bit more back to your chapters, you give them, this app that you've already done. You just copy, you bring it down, you give, you rebrand it so it's the chapter logo along with your logo, and now they have similar to what you just had, except for now we're going to just change functionality just a little bit to give either region or chapter specific information.
We got a customer in Australia that did that for mortgage brokers. There's 138 mortgage brokers that are using apps that literally have exactly the same function in them, but look completely different. And that's one of our white label customers. We have another hospital or newspaper that's done like 112 different apps. Let's talk about some best practices around user experiences. This quote from Harvard Business Review: "Decision simplicity is the top driver of marketing stickiness." I have to tell you a story about stickiness. We give away these things all the time, right? Little giveaways. So one of the guys on our marketing team gets this idea in his head of this, what do you call it, air deodorizer that you hang in your car. right? It's a girl who has got like jeans on, and she's turned this way, and she's got a sticker that says Mobile Smith, and it's right here, and it says something like great sticky apps or something like that, and I'm like, he's insane. So I bought 100 of them, just as a joke. Somehow or another, those 100 made it to a trade show last week. It's called the Internet Summit Robin. You know who Steve Wozniak is?
Yeah.
Steve Wozniak saw it from 50 feet away and came over and asked if he had a 10. So I'm thinking, okay, what makes people sticky to things I don't understand? Maybe that's not it. I mean, I created the fact that I now have Steve Wozniak's email address, his phone number. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I'll figure out a way to do it, but it was because of business card. I got it. You can't get freebies from us without you guys can. People who come to trade shows can't get this.
That's
without.
a unique business card.
Yeah. So you don't really know what's going to make an app stick to a person's phone. Let's talk a little bit about this for a second. What is the last thing you downloaded that you did not delete? What about you?
Well, there's quite a bit. I mean,
Just pick-
personal use, business use,
Either way.
probably ASLs.
Okay. What about you?
I would say probably Hearthstone.
Okay. What do you think were the reasons why they did not get deleted?
Easy to use,
Okay.
and cozy back.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't delete it, and we're already in November and contract back in August, is because I assume ASA is going to update it next year. That might have to do with anything.
Maybe. Depends on if they paid Crowd Compass $30,000 to make it and decide that was too much of a cost, which a lot of people do.
Uber and Hyatt yesterday, because I'm traveling 3 times in the next 3 weeks, and I'm gonna be running.
It's really great marketplace. Marketplace is a big thing. Anybody in the group, I'm a member of a startup group in Raleigh, and marketplaces is really the big thing right now. Replacing the traditional purchase model or whatever with a marketplace. Car washes. I don't know if you guys have seen that until you're here. It's taking the Uber model now and it's going to put these other little car wash businesses that move around vans, kind of like food truck kind of things. But you can call one to your, oh, who's nearby? Yeah, get him. I want him to come here. We spent a lot of time doing that. I downloaded an app called Acompli, ACOMPLI. For those of you that use email frequently and calendar and have access to it is an app I like because it replaces 3 apps for me in one. It integrates with Dropbox, so I can see all of my files, not just from Dropbox, but also the files that are in my inbox. So what it does is it goes through your inbox and says, you ever look through, I'm trying to find this daggone PowerPoint. It happened to me earlier. I was looking for the PowerPoint I sent in, and I just went into my contacts and there it is. It's right there. It just gives me the list. These 4 files are in your inbox. I think it's ACOMPLI. My calendar's right there. It integrates with Outlook. I know the whole thing works really well. The stickiness for that app, it is there. In fact, I mandated that all my team members use it because it makes them so effective. And so the stickiness for that is this big thing. Okay. My Microsoft Health has different stickiness. It is that I can see my heart rate when I sleep. Okay, so I have epilepsy and I also have sleep apnea. So I'm prone to have seizures while I sleep. And so it's very important to me that I see my heart rate, what it's doing overnight. Now, what I can't wait to see is when they put an alarm on there that says when it gets above 80, it vibrates, it wakes me up. That the earth shatter. But those are going to be the things that meet me in my space, right? That's what an app needs to do. It needs to meet you in your space, whatever that space is. And you hope to find a demographic. You guys kind of have a natural identified demographic that you know kind of who they are and what their space is. But even within that, you still have to make it convenient and useful. Right? You have to make it 2 clicks clean. Okay? You can write that down. 2 clicks clean. I have to be able to get to key functions, open the app, hit something, and be there. If it takes me anything more than that, it's not going to last.
Or if it's quicker someplace else. If there's another app that does it better, they're going to the other app and your app is gone. So simple and quick.
2 clicks clean. It's not you can look at, how many of you have Google Analytics on your website? Okay. So one of the things, if you haven't done this with your mobile apps and you write specs for a custom app developer later, you need to make sure they integrate Google Analytics with your mobile app. You'll be able to see everything. In fact, they just released a new layer of function for mobile apps, Google did. I used to recommend Flurry as equal, but since they got acquired by Yahoo, I think they've stifled their development and Google has moved in another direction. I met with DHA, Defense Health Agency, about a month and a half ago. They've released 10 apps to the App Store. Google metrics, not an ego. They don't know how many people deleted it. They don't know what path they went through. Now, meanwhile, how many of you shop at Southern States? Southern States, little ag farm and garden store. How many of you have chickens at home? So let's talk about this because this is a good example, and then we're going to move past this particular Keep It Simple bill. They wanted to build a mobile app, and they just really didn't know what it was. And so they started looking at some things. We went and interviewed some people at stores. And we found this really unique thing there. And there was this group of customers who were coming in and they were buying chickens during chick days. These little, tiny little biddies is what they're called. And they were raising them up so they could make eggs at home, fresh eggs. My mother and father all live on a farm, so I get fresh eggs for free from them. So I don't have to have any chickens, plus my neighborhood would put me out of business. But it's a really unique demographic. In fact, I would venture to say, and I'm not trying to be sexist, this is just the truth, a lot of you ladies are right in that demographic, because that's who these people were. They were between the ages of 25 and 45, working women, maybe mothers, who really wanted to have a good natural food experience. These people spent money, right? They were coming in on chick day and they were buying everything. I need feeders, I need cookers, I need heaters, right? But Southern States had all this other stuff to sell to them. So you know what they did? They built a chick app. It's called Poultry Pal. Its sole purpose is for these women to learn how to take care of these chickens. And I say women because it's 97%. Only 3% of the people who do that in their demographics are men. They have 8,700 users of that app. And only like 3% have deleted it. And you know why? You know what the most important thing in that app is? The photo gallery. People taking pictures of their chickens who all have names. Look at the girls. They're all the girls, because you don't buy roosters, by the way, because they don't lay eggs. Plus, you don't want eggs. How many of you grew up on a farm? You're eating a half-fertilized egg. It's a very shocking scenario. So anyway, simple. That thing does 3 things. That's it. Again, we're going to talk about your special sauce. We talked about those a little earlier. 10 seconds to decide whether to download an app and 30 seconds to decide whether to keep it. Okay. How many of you play games on apps? How many, tell me a couple games other than Angry Birds.
Candy Crush. Words
Okay.
with Friends.
Yeah.
Trivia Crack.
Which one?
Trivia Crack.
Okay. I'm going to be down on some games later. I'm a sucker for like the top 10. I just go look and I pop one every once in a while. Which one?
Jelly Mania,
I'm
Farm
sorry.
Heroes.
So I'm a big Angry Birds fan, and I'll start getting to it pretty clear here. I just downloaded a game called Retry, which is just this little plane thing. You got to keep it flying over all these things and everything else. I downloaded 8 other games before I played that app. So it was the night for one. Every other one of those was gone. I opened it up and deleted it. I really didn't even play a lot of them. Like, it's too confusing. I don't get it. You know, if you've got to show me 3 pages of directions, this is not for me. And so you got to think about that. And I go back and make those comments. I said, listen, you got to find a way so I don't have to read 3 pages before I can play your game. So you need to think about that. What is your special sauce? This is going to be very important for what we're getting ready to do. Think of 2 to 3 key functions that your users would embrace, that they are yearning for. Could be things they're getting from your website. Could be things you're not offered at all. Try and avoid upfront registration. This will lead to this problem up here. Ooh, I'm not doing that. I'm going to put my name anywhere else. And then be connected to them. You know, use the over-the-air messaging, bring value to them over time so that they stay engaged with your app. So we want to make sure and do a clean and catchy design. So this is our marketing app. So a lot of the stuff you get from our website, you can just download this app and get the same things there too. We like this design because it really is simple. And no, we did not steal this from Windows. This was just something that one of our graphics people did. We've actually released 3 versions of that. All 3 of them were completely different, but all have the exact same function. We actually give this app away to our customers so that we can encourage them to do an app of their own. So for example, if you guys want to do an app, it's just about us. Forget about our members. This is just who we are. We're this association. Here's our executive team. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's our social feeds. Here's our LinkedIn profile and stuff. You want to have an elegant logo with an eye-catching icon. So this is our logo. I don't know if you guys, it's like a drafter's drawing. It's, that was a tough decision, by the way.
What work have you done with companies to kind of have them bring their marketing standards up to the mobile app one? Where they all have colors got to be this, logo has to look like this, font has to be this, which when you get into the world of mobile, but kind of the sky's the limit. How do they?
It's a couple things. We have a branding guide where we help people kind of understand how to do that. These are the things that you need to develop to kind of be your brand standards. In our platform, we actually rip all those things off your CSS feed. So you type in your website address and hit go, and it brings in all your colors and all those other things so that the designers have a palette that already matches your brand. So we do some technical things to do that. The other thing we do in the development process is you cannot submit an app unless you've got everything done. So you're not going to have this mistake of, oh, I didn't put a splash image in, or I didn't put this icon size up. You have to do that or else it won't build the app. And so we give you instructions on how to do that. We do consulting engagements with people. And John can help us re-engage through Fusion to help you go through that process and develop your own marketing. We did 16 of those last quarter, actually. And sometimes it's virtual, half day. You have to be different things. This is remember we were talking about earlier about too many buttons. So this really is a mobile website. I mean, if this is what you've got to be, if it's so much, to even find what I want to do, I got to look through 3, 6, 9, 12, 14 things. So is there a way to break this stuff down and kind of, maybe it should be a slider menu, right? And then have it come to the most effective thing first. We do that with a lot of our customers. One of our retail customers, he had a similar look and feel with fewer buttons, and we looked at his Google Analytics and found out that something like 85% of his users are going immediately to the list view of the store locations. And so version 2 opens you up to store location and immediately geolocates you to the closest one. So we learned from that Google Analytics to treat it differently. You don't want to be looking around. You're going to be very careful about how much clutter you put in there. A lot of people like to put these little banner ads, and then the advertisement in the other world. Maybe you might want to sell advertisement in your ad. Just be careful about where you put it and how much. Those can be off-putting to users.
So this goes back to the last slide, form versus function, and there can be, it's widely debated what's better, form or function, especially when looking at websites. When it comes to mobile apps, it's a 50-50 split. You have to have the function there, but it has to look good, it has to be simple, and it has to be easy to use. Because without that, it's going to get dumped right away. This app would be dropped probably pretty quick from most people's phones because there's just too much information there, and they're probably going to be able to get it someplace else a lot quicker.
How many of you have, I love this Microsoft Health app. I've been using this thing for 2 weeks. And it really does, all it does is show me the day. That's it. I can go like here and get the slide out and then do some other things. Rarely do that. Mostly I'm just looking at, okay, how many calories did I eat yesterday? How much did I run yesterday? I didn't have it hooked up yet, but how much did I sleep? You know, this is very key to me, and then it goes down from there. You will find a lot of apps. I mean, Facebook, if you guys have been a Facebook user for a long time, the CEO only admits to making one mistake in his career so far, and that was choosing HTML5 as his first mobile app. It was also very kludgy in the way you had to get around. The slide out menu has been very helpful for its use.
So, can I ask a question
Absolutely.
about that? So the screen that you showed is an event. That's kind of a captured audience. Anyone at that event, and our meeting people would say we have to have that many buttons because we capture the advertising. But is it different because that's such a captured market for a short amount of time? And then our difficulty is then moving all those people that are downloading that app into
It can be, but I don't disagree with you that this is necessary for an event,
Okay.
right? Why do I have all that on the front page? I mean, it really is. Why not push this out? When I have a slide out menu that gives me these things as a list and then takes me right to it. And then have some compelling information here, like a rolling banner that gives me the biggest speakers, right? 10 a.m. is so-and-so, and 4 a.m. let me go click on that session and sign up for it. I mean, this is it. This is what people are going to judge you on. They're literally going to make 85% of their decision based on what they see the first time they open it up. And so, but what if you want to change it later too? What if you want to, I would challenge you guys from an event app perspective that you really should be using these event apps for other use cases. You should take that event. If you've got some big thing you've kicked off for the year at that event, let's say it's a legal issue, healthcare, right? Why not, after a month's past, convert that app into being a lot of stuff about healthcare for your association and really use it as a landing space. And then you can switch the front screen and this agenda and all that other stuff, they just go away. But you tuck them back here so that I can make those changes and it won't matter. Front screen can change dynamically. I'm a real big fan of the slider front screen. I don't know if you guys have seen that, where you have a couple of buttons down here and then there's sliders that are moving across. I will tell you, you can do this. Users hate it. They absolutely hate it. They don't like being overwhelmed. Okay, I need to see the agenda. Where is the agenda at? Right? But if I hit a list and there's the word agenda right there in bold, I can find it a lot easier. What you're basically doing is you're forcing people to make an icon decision when they really need to be making a list decision. Does that make sense? Icon versus list? Right, and these are not distinguishable enough to be easy on the eye.
And to add to that, Robert talked about the 2-click quit thing. If it's not within 2 clicks, people are going to get rid of it. The event app that's where that differs. The event app, people need that information. So if it's going to take 2 or 3 clicks to get to it, so that's why if you group these together, and so you don't have so many on that front page, it's going to make it a lot easier to actually move through, and it's going to be more eye-catching, more pleasing.
I'll tell you this, I sat in a McDonald's meeting with 700 people who had a Crowd Compass app that looked like that on the front screen, and 80% of them needed it before the first day of the session was over with, and they were all using it both. They hated the app, they just didn't use it, it was a waste of money. It was a $30,000 waste of money. Yeah. And that is the slippery slope of Google Analytics, right? You put them in there, you're going to have to show them to somebody afterwards. Or maybe you don't tell anybody you put them in there the first time. I don't know what to tell you. See this? You see this right here? That is a much better way to present that information And whether you do that in a slide out menu or not, it's cleaner, it makes sense. These are the core pieces. I could still have another slide out menu that gives me the, you know, hotels that are nearby and all those other things. But these are the key functions. While I'm there, you know, local actually is where it's going to bring up the restaurants and all those other things. And again, it should be a focal point. It should be clear to them what the important sections are. The important sections are. Remember, that is the key things that you need. The other stuff, just stick back here, right? You can use a tab bar or slide. I don't agree. I don't know. I disagree with this particular point. I don't think you should do this at all. I think you should do it on slide out menu instead, because it gives you an even cleaner front screen. This is an example of a very targeted app towards a very specific use case. And this is cancer patients that are visiting the Wake Forest Cancer Care Center in North Carolina. This got a bunch of awards from different people in the healthcare industry. And the funny thing is about this particular use case is this piece of function right here. So people weren't willing to go and, like, not everybody's proud to be involved. By the way, I shave bald, I have full red hair. So I really do. But either way, the people that were losing the hair from cancer care didn't want to go into the little gift store and try the wigs on. So what this allows them to do is actually take a picture of themselves and put the different wigs over their head. Now, there was an unintended consequence of this app. 3 times more people downloaded it than actually are being treated by the Wake Forest Cancer Center. So it turned out a bunch of people downloaded and put wigs on their head and put them on Facebook. So we actually created a whole nother app, put it in the App Store that has the wig stuff, hats, face. We do that all the time, just build an app, stick it in the App Store. I forget what the name of it is. I can tell you later. The key functions they had on their list, there was 10 of them that they started with. They boiled it down to 6, and that's what ended up in the app. And so everything you see that app does is right there in front of you. There's no hidden spaces, there's no additional function. And they've been pretty pleased with it. So that's a very specific use case targeted at a very individual community. Now I think John's going to talk a little bit about this.
So this goes to back to the event app and personalizing our experience. And Robert talked a lot about the slide out. When we built this, the slide out wasn't available, so we did go with the tabs. But you can see where I talked about, we group these things. So our agenda is inside here, and we can get deeper into our agenda as what's happening now, picking rooms, going out to our full agenda, going out to your personalized agenda. We also have a community. So one of the things that we found, and there was a study that was done, that 2 of the biggest things that people are really interested in when it comes to event apps is your community, as well as what the agenda is, what's going on in what room, who's speaking, what the session is about. So those are 2 of the biggest things that really come out of your app and why people are downloading your app and looking at your app. They want to know what's happening, when it's happening, and who's a part of your community that's actually at your app, at your event. Now, one of the things that we found that it starts to go outside, it's seeping outside your event. So like Robert talked about is, don't just make your app about the one event. Expand, start going beyond this. So what we've even done for our app is, we talked about we have a Fusion team inside here. So now the 2014 Digital Now app not only talks about what happened at Digital Now, but it also talks about Fusion Productions, who helped produce that meeting, and the different avenues that we took in order to get the app out as well as to get Digital Now out. So we're starting to expand our community. Additionally, if I can actually. Yeah. So, additionally, what that led us to is the fact that people are looking for member directories, and whether they're based off of your event or you're now expanding to your entire member base within your AMS, that you're pulling it in and you're going in there and you're allowing either the public to see certain pieces of information, and if you want to have others log in that are part of your association to see more important pieces of information. So if you have interests that you want to share amongst members, that's where we start to get into our member directory. Or if you want to go to a buyer's guide and you sell additional space on your app for your store directories, so that people can say, oh, well, these are individuals that are not individual members, but are actually company members. So now maybe they're paying for a little bit more space and they have a bigger page. Industry-related tools, where we have calculators. I believe that, Robert, you guys built a mortgage calculator for one of your clients.
You can also write those in Java and stick them right in the app too.
Yeah, one of the nice things about the mortgage platform is that if you have Java that you want to throw in there, you can actually toss it in and open it up on a page. If you have another app that's been built, we can integrate that app right directly into a MobileSmith app if that's where you want it to go. But these are just some of the things: the member directory, the store directory, your event apps, and they're all actually coming. If you look at your event apps, they're all coming from there. If you look at it, members connecting with members, association connecting content, bringing that whole context together so that you're understanding your member is understanding where your association is going, and then being able to work together on having a roadmap so together you're moving forward. So this just goes back to event apps, publication and news apps, pulling data directly from your CMS. Maybe you're just getting snippets. Maybe you're actually allowing them to download PDFs. I look around and probably at least half of you guys are using some type of tablet, or I've seen a lot of people on their phones getting their emails. Everyone's always connected somehow, and we need to be able to make sure that we're giving them the information they need and having it ready for them before they even know if they need it. And that's where, going back to the Google Analytics, we're knowing where people are going in our website already, so let's use that information and make sure it's really readily available as soon as someone puts their hand in their pocket and they pull it out and say, oh yeah, this is what I wanted, and they're going to move forward. That's going to keep that app on their phone, and that's the number one thing, is keep the app on the phone.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I found it very interesting that you did not have an app for this meeting, but I also really appreciated the fact that you didn't have an app for this meeting. I've been to one-day meetings before where they created apps, and I feel like it just took up space on my phone and didn't give me any value, and I deleted it. So I was curious, I mean, especially since we're talking about it. Like,
I almost built one.
You almost
Literally.
did?
I had a meeting about it with one of my team members, and it was one of those things where we build sample apps all the time for different people. Like we'll actually go to your app that's in the app store, we'll look at it, and we will replace it. We'll show up to the meeting and say, how much did you spend doing that? And they'll say 80 grand. Great, we built it yesterday. We've done that dozens of times. I almost did it, but I actually had to make a decision about something that had revenue attached to it that I needed to do for Duke University by 9 o'clock this morning.
Oh.
And for this, I was going to surprise them. But
Yeah, well, and to that point, we thought about creating it too, but we didn't want to inundate everybody. Not everyone was coming for every session. We thought about it, and we just felt that we're a nice tight-knit group.
It was in the first conversation I think we had.
Yeah.
We kind of mentioned it, and
yeah, they could have built it too. They have a license.
Well, no, I don't mean to berate you for
No,
not
no,
having
no.
one. I actually truly do appreciate not having one,
Yeah.
because I don't need one more thing on my
And I
phone.
wonder if there's any information out there about app overload, app
Yeah.
weirdness.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
It feels like there's an app for every single thing.
Yeah, that's why again, you got to have the right use case. Like we would argue, the use case we're going to do in a few minutes, because I've already decided what we're going to do, is a we'll go through that decision making around that use case before we're still going to try and figure out what the app should have in it, but we'll talk through the use case itself. So.
Justin, did you want to finish your thought?
yeah, I was just agreeing with you completely. I think kind of what came out of that was a really brief thing. It's like it's a one-day event, it's just too much. So yeah, you got to have the right reason to have it too.
Yeah, we talked to UNC's athletic department about. Were you in UNC?
Apparently.
It's not going well.
So we were talking to them about, like, they want to do a football app, and they were talking about, why don't you do an app for each game? And so we're going through that process with them right now to try and discern whether or not each game in and of itself should have an app, or should they have one app for all games. Statistics say that something like 60% of people who go to a college football game are only going to one. And so there's a little bit about, there is a community for a game, not necessarily a community for a season. So there's a whole like we're going through that process right now to try to understand it more. We're talking to the ticketing office, doing that research. So I want to reiterate the fact that I am a Clemson graduate. And, they are the only decent school.
Oh, stop.
Yes.
There is talk that apps are short term. What do you find is going to be the next phase besides apps? Because I know there's that big debate out there that apps are no longer going to be the thing in 5 years.
Yeah, nobody knows what it's going to be in 5 years.
Or 2 years.
So the scenario that most people, we spend a lot of time doing this. You know, we go to these Microsoft Future Tech type of conferences and stuff. So what they think is going to happen is that there's going to be you, and then there's going to be devices, right? And the you gets identified to the devices, and then all the things that are you then become a part of whatever device you have, right? So think of a scenario where on your watch you have an RFID chip, and you sit down at a computer, and with the click of your fingerprint, that computer comes up with everything that is you. Or you go home and you sit in front of your TV, and the same thing happens. Now, this is the vision that I think Microsoft started with their table technologies, is where they were headed, and then they shifted a bunch of dollars into the laptops because they said, okay, you know, we need revenue for the next 3 years. Let's keep that going. That's where they think Apple TV is headed with their television set. Is towards you can see it a little bit now as you start to see the interactivity between the newest iOS devices and the Apple TV and the Apple computers. So the scenario is going to be, it's not going to be about a device necessarily. They're even saying that it's probably going to be in a watch and the TV, and a watch and monitors, and McDonald's has actually invested some dollars in figuring out how to put screens in their stores that when you come in, instead of popping your laptop up and working for an hour, that either there's a screen at a table that you can lean over and work. Does that make sense? So there's a feeling that, I don't know if it's 5 years. I mean, I think that's being aggressive to say that you could get that much hardware out of the marketplace, that new hardware into the marketplace in 5 years. I mean, you see the movement of people from one device to the other. I think you're probably talking about 5 to 10 years.
That requires something to be able to basically catch the business intelligence of the individuals. And I know that's where a lot of places are going right now, is being able to have that data on where, Prada does it very well. You walk into their store and talk about them, they ping you everywhere you go, what you bought the last year and a half, and what's going to go with it.
Yeah, that's the Bluetooth connectivity
Right,
that I'm
so
talking
with
about.
that being said, you have to have somebody to be able to collect that data, so if they do a watch or something, you're going to need that.
Well, this is going to be the Vault. So if you look at Microsoft and their Vault technology, so Microsoft has what's called a Health Vault. Are you guys familiar with that? So the Microsoft Health Vault can actually be the place where your medical records are stored. It integrates with most of the EMR systems, so that if you have a doctor's office, you can connect Microsoft's Health Vault to your doctor's office, where they put in your forms and your tests. And then there's a general assumption that eventually the band will connect to the app, which for the Vault, which will connect to the doctor's office, in a scenario where the doctor will be able to see that you had a bad night's sleep last night, and I think you should come and see me, and let me send you a proactive alert that says, or do a telemedicine. So there's a lot of, but you can't.
Wearables are really the next generation. We showed that actually at Digital Now last year. For those who were there, we had Epsilon was demonstrating both wearable T-shirts, wearable socks, wearable bras, where they're capturing that information. They can sit there, you capture the data, bounce off of a Bluetooth, and give you feedback as you're overpronating in your run through a pair of Google Glasses from feedback. So those capabilities are going to be there, but I think that the device will still be always there, in the sense that you're going to want to be able to communicate until you have voice and communication ability and natural query coming back in to kind of give you that feedback loop into the system. There's always going to be an interactive component going on.
Right. Now you're going to have device preference, right? I like having a device that's this big, and that's going to be whatever it is at the time. Whether it's Apple or whoever. But I think the wearable is where you're going to go. we're gonna move along.
Yeah, so just to touch back on how to bring that back to the association world, it's your AMS. Your AMS is housing all the data on your individuals. So, bringing it back into the association world, we have that repository that we can put information in, whether it's based off of our mobile device, getting information that we can try and push back into the AMS, or it's your website. And then therefore, also what it's going to be able to show you based off of your preferences or your topic codes or your interests. I mean, that's kind of where this is going. That's what MobileScript this platform can really do for you too. Pull information, push information back in, and then give you the personalized experience that your association members are really looking for.
So we're going to walk through some questions and things that you should consider doing as you're walking through the process of deciding. The first of those is do your research. So who are your end users? What's the demographic? And what are your goals for that app? It's very important that you have that. It's not just get a mobile app. I need a mobile app that enables me or enables them. Find out what that root cause of the reason that you want to have a mobile app. And then start figuring out what are the key functions that are going to make them useful. What are they going to do during their information snacking time in your app? If you guys have ever heard of that terminology, I don't think we made it. We use it a lot. You are much more likely to spend information snacking time in a mobile app than anywhere else. Mobile web is dead, right? People just aren't using it anymore. You force me to go to a mobile web, it's so painful, right? Copy and pasting links and all right. Polish your use case. I work for a mobile app company. So
They pay you to say that.
No, they don't know what they pay me for. You really want to start with a really big list and then narrow it down. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of good ideas, a lot of mixed ideas. You don't know where you're going to end up. Remember we talked about earlier how just make change into something else, and that's usually the process that you go through. But don't make it last forever. Right? Don't become a government agency around this. I spend so much time with these people, it is a miracle. Pick 2 to 3 functions that you consider to be the most important. Pick 3 to 4 that you think are secondary. And then think about those for your next version. Right? Those are things, okay, I know those are going to be cool. And just in case it doesn't get accepted super well, or backup plan is, we've already got 2 new functions rolling out. I'm thinking of boss speak at that point. Some of you may not have a boss, but a board. Play with wireframes. Maybe start with a pen and a piece of paper. They make some neat little pads, but they're like screens for iPhones and iPads, where you can kind of draw out what you want your use case to look like. That's what I always do when I build an app, is I build my app, the function of it in the platform, and then I draw out what I want the front screen, and I hand the whole thing to a graphics guy and say, make it look good. And then I go away and he does that, or she does it. Tap through the wireframes. Actually write them, like put them in front of you as if they're a mobile app. So click there, it's here. Like make that experience real for yourself. And then run some of them by maybe some end users and let them see what they think. This talks more about our platform. We are going to skip that. We are going to skip that to the testing piece. Just make sure you don't send an app out that doesn't work. Net. That is train wreck city, right? Make sure you get a bunch of different people internally to try on different devices, and don't send anything out there that's going to blow up on 8.1. We have a problem right now, actually. Version 8.1 of Apple's release was terrible, and there was some special bad stuff in there, and it's making some apps misbehave because people are scared to go to 8.2, which you should immediately go to 8.2 if you haven't done so yet. We actually sent an email out the day they released 8.1 telling all of our customers do not load 8.1 because we saw it, we see it earlier than anybody else does. So we're going to talk about a use case right now. I want you guys to break up into teams. These, you 2 and you 4. Let's see. You 8. You 5 in the corner and you 5 back there. Okay? Elect a team captain. I want you guys to take the next, we have 15 minutes to do this. I want you to take the next 7 minutes. And I want you to imagine a scenario where you are creating an app that is a recruiting app for the Registered Nurses Association of America. Right? So this is not an app for members, right? This is coming from you. You work for this organization. The marketing department, the recruitment departments come to you and said, listen, we've got this big campaign coming up. We want to get a whole bunch of nurses into our organization. We want a mobile app to help us with that. Okay? So I want you guys to spend 7 minutes telling me what are at least 6. We'll go around the room because you're going to come up with some of the same ideas. 6 ideas for things that should be in that app. Okay?
Who doesn't have an easel? Who doesn't have one?
What's recruitment? Yep. Membership recruitment. They are not in the association. You want to get them in there and get their dues.
Membership recruitment.
Try to get the dues.
Recruitment app, there has to be some means of transaction where they can have.
I'm Robert. Color runs on all the colors the same way people do. So your goal is to get more nurses in the association paying dues.
So I sent the application and I went down to do it, right there.
Just write that.
The reason why this person are going to get
Yeah, just talking in general, like what is your app and like what are all the
but it's whoever, the typical nurse is not in the association. Because over time, you're getting your learning.
Well, I think if you.
Put it down, but I guess if you're and your job is running services, that was where you talk about money first before giving them the service, right?
In the end, you're talking about
I think the payments for payment and sign up.
All right, got about 3 more minutes.
Membership for association with you.
Yes, time is 15 minutes. Sign up.
You follow the email, say, they went on, they might have been able to.
So there's no competition. It's part of your
They get an email later that day or the next day that says, hey.
used to always being a member.
Yeah, this is going well.
Sort of whatever.
So it's always in what do we call it? Student recruiting.
It's like a tactic. It's a
So
Maybe it's not lesser money, but
Yeah, I would do something like high school to our player. It's just like how nurses impact like the world, so you know where you're joining and you're being part of this player impact. So you sort of pitch on like why
I think this benefits is different. This is more of a patient piece.
Yeah. It's like, why you want to be part of this group is more than the impact.
Here's a list of why you might want to do
So
maybe like a, yeah.
Feel good.
My nurse is
That's
almost
I actually, the half of you don't have
take it one step more. You might be actually people with these
Right.
That's
You
good.
get a pretty good nice.
So that's
Regional, or do you wanna go, I mean, cause you talk about employees, it's like, there's also regional, it could be a giant, you know, a giant hospital, but.
Regional.
Keychain.
All right, about a minute and a half.
So one thing that happens is continuing education is a big thing. So I don't know if that's, you know, or if it's something that you would want to stress with other individuals. And learning too.
All right, let's start wrapping it up and pick a team captain.
Yeah, it may be like something fun. Like this would be like a, yeah, like I'm thinking I'm almost thinking like continued to learn and see how many. I think only because you want to be part of something.
Why?
Waiting out versus
All right, let's wrap it up.
So if we could just grab everyone's attention again.
Everybody got a team captain? Just to remind you, I got a box of free stuff up here. These pins are really good. I'm gonna stick a few in my pocket.
I'll take one.
You come up here and get it. I don't want to throw it at you. It's a liability I'm not willing to accept. Some other stuff here too. All right. So we've talked about this app that we're going to try and use for membership recruitment. Okay. I'm going to get people to. I apologize. I don't know how you guys think. I always think about sales, so I'm just thinking about selling. So right, that's what's in my head. I've been enlightened to a few other things. So let's start with this team back here. Why don't you tell us about one of the functions you think is key to be in this app?
Why membership's important?
Why it's important. So you want kind of a why value statement. Now, this is actually a fairly easy thing to do because it's either content or some type of list view. You may have like a one pager, or you could have 6 benefits and then click the benefits. So one of the things I want to do is you guys give me these lists, and we want to talk about the level of difficulty. That could be leveraged from existing content. That is really simple to do. It's just repurposing content or writing words. There's no innate new function that needs to come along with that.
And I do think infographic too. I wouldn't, it doesn't necessarily need to be words.
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever it is, it's not going to be hard to do.
Yeah.
So level of complexity from 1 to 10, we're going to give this a 1. It's about. Sorry, I'm going to do a level of complexity here. And my handwriting's terrible, so these things are always too short. They're meant for somebody who's a foot shorter than I am. I need to write up here. Okay. You guys back there?
Sure. We focus on some of the carrots that we can kind of develop to get people to want to access the information, and so we can kind of reel them in as members. So one thing that's important for a lot of clinical people are the clinical guidelines. So things that they can download and reference. So reference materials on a day-to-day basis could be a big draw for it. Okay. Do you want more? Or?
No, that's good. Let's talk about that. That's going to be a little more complicated, right? Because the guidelines may be in different formats. They're probably going to be different by state. You're probably going to have to potentially have some geolocation decision that they maybe what state am I in that they have to say at the beginning of that. Or it grabs their geolocation from their phone and immediately gives them the state they're in, or they can choose to pick another one if they're traveling. Does that make sense? So there's a little more complexity here. you don't know where the content's coming from exactly. Can I get an RSS feed of this content? Can I get an XML feed of this content? Do I need to have REST services to